Good afternoon and welcome to the Future of Conservation session. I'm Emily Lomax, Youth Development Manager at the RSPB, and I lead our work with older teenagers and young adults. So in today's session, you'll be hearing from two members of our Youth Council. Kabir and Yanis have both been with us for just over a year. Today, they're going to give you an insight into what it means to be part of the Youth Council, what they do and why. And they'll also be sharing their perspective on the environment that they will inherit. First, may I introduce you to Kabir?
Hi everyone, hope you're having a brilliant day. I'm Kabir Kaul. I'm a young conservationist, wildlife writer, and passionate advocate for London's biodiversity. I love birds in particular, and when I was 7, I looked out into my North London garden and saw a wealth of wildlife. This encouraged me to explore the local area, and I found some fascinating nature reserves on my very doorstep. I would predominantly see birds, and as a result, I got hold of second-hand binoculars and a field guide and started to go birding around the capital. Realizing that there was so much wildlife in London motivated me to raise awareness about the capital's biodiversity, and I do this through blogging, writing, public speaking, and social media. Myself and Yanis are RSPB youth councillors, and this afternoon we'll be explaining who we are, what our role is within the society, and how we are campaigning for the future of the environment that we will inherit. The Youth Council is a group of young naturalists that promote youth engagement within the RSPB through activism and conservation. We meet 4 times a year at a different nature reserve around the country to discuss the society's strategies for young people, how we are individually raising awareness about wildlife, different approaches to campaigning, and how to be more effective within the RSPB as a whole. We also help to run the RSPB's teenage magazine, Wingbeat, by writing articles and brainstorming fun ideas. Just like everyone at the moment, we've had to make sacrifices due to the coronavirus pandemic. For this reason, we've been forced to move onto an online meeting format. Fortunately, this means that our meetings are a lot more accessible, not only for us councillors, but also for any RSPB staff member who might need youth feedback, or who is just interested in seeing how the RSPB Youth Council works. This creates a great opportunity for us to increase our influence within the RSPB. The society as a whole needs a lot more youth feedback. So if you need any, please approach us. Besides meetings, the youth councillors work individually too, using their expertise in the natural world and their experiences as young people to educate and inform different audiences across the country. Over the past year, we have raised awareness about our declining species at Hen Harrier Day and the Back from the Brink Festival, spoken at a parliamentary reception emphasising the drive and enthusiasm of young people tackling the environmental crisis, and voiced our opinions on youth engagement and green recovery at the Time Is Now lobby via Zoom, expressing our views about the climate emergency to our MPs. Furthermore, we've given feedback and advice on a variety of the Society's projects. Recently, we put together a strategy for the Youth Council, which outlines how we can continue offering a youth voice for the RSPB, inspire others to take action, help members gain new skills and boost self-esteem, and ensure the Society provides opportunities for young people through bringing many different perspectives together on a wide range of issues. Within the strategy, we outline our main goal and focus, which is to use nature as a tool to inspire young people to take a stand for their livelihoods and for all the species which we love. We believe that nature has the power to change young people's lives on nearly every level, and that the RSPB has the capacity to create this shift. If this is to be successful, the RSPB must work with, for, and through young people, thereby making the society's activities more appealing to our generation and encouraging them to work passionately and collaboratively to make a difference for nature. Now I'd like to hand over to Yanis, who will explain more about how we intend to protect the environment that we will inherit.
Hi everybody. Before I start my section of the talk, I will quickly introduce myself. I'm Yanis Kuhlman, a relatively new but very enthusiastic young environmentalist. I've always loved nature. Many of my holidays and weekends have been spent exploring the different wild spaces in the UK. I've been wild camping in the Hebrides, I've seen Alfred Ness's unique habitat, and Flambury's breathtaking cliffs. These places are all extremely important to me, and I adore them deeply. Untouched land is crucial for saving nature and tackling the climate crisis, and I hate to see it destroyed. The experiences I've had in nature have inspired me to become an environmentalist and take a stand against our leaders. I now pledge for more youth engagement within the conservation sector and give youth perspectives on numerous environmental projects. Now, as just said, the RSPB Youth Council has created a strategy which is focused around the concept of empowering young people through nature. But how will this work? How's the Youth Council working towards this goal? And why are youth necessary in conservation at all? Well, nature has a massive potential to improve the lives of young people. Being out in nature is shown to improve mental health and helps people to stay active. These are two things that our generation struggles with massively. However, nature doesn't only affect health, it also has the ability to inspire. Being in nature shows people what's at stake, and creating a personal connection with nature gives something to fight for. We are all here today because we love nature, and we don't want it to suffer under the strain of modern day society. We love nature because we've made a personal connection with it. However, if you've never had the opportunity to be in nature, and so have never been able to make a personal connection with it, then why would you care that it's dying? Why would you care that the turtle dove is close to extinction, or that hedgehog numbers are falling rapidly? Why would you even care that the ice caps are melting? Many young people, especially those from lower class backgrounds, have never had the opportunity to develop a connection with nature. And so it is to us to give it to them. The connections made will be critical for creating a generation which is ready and willing to fight for our climate and stand up for our nature. Motivated young people are also necessary to keep conservation going. You can do as much conservation as you like now, but if there's no one to keep it up, all the effort was pointless. The RSPB needs young people. As you may or may not know, the conservation sector has an extreme lack of diversity, notwithstanding youth. I know from experience that youth groups within the RSPB are dominated by children from privileged backgrounds. We have masses of room for improvement. The problem behind this is, of course, the lack of awareness of nature. When I was in Anglesey, off the coast of Wales, I was stunned by the number of choughs that dominated the sky, as any other bird would. However, I was even more shocked when I realized that the local who owned the campsite I was on didn't even know what a chough was. As said before, we as youth councillors aim to immerse young people in nature. If we can raise awareness about the importance of the natural world to children across the country, we can evoke a curiosity for wildlife in young people of many different ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds. This can potentially, in turn, inspire friends, families, and even whole communities who previously may not have been interested in the subject or thought of it as a waste of time to notice and appreciate the everyday plants and animals around them. If we wish to see more diversity in the fight for the natural world, we must work with every community. And if this is delivered well, the effects can be profound. So how is the Youth Council itself working towards all these goals? Well, we need and we want more young people in nature. And so that is what we push for. We do this by informing the RSPB and other campaigners on the necessity and essentiality of young people in the fight for nature. We give feedback on youth-related issues so that the RSPB will continue to create more youth engagement. And most importantly, we inspire other young people to get involved with the RSPB and to get into nature. Youth are necessary for the RSPB. You need us. We are what comes next. And if you do not incorporate us, there will be no next for you. We as a generation will have to live with the effects of climate change for longer than any of you. So please, for the sake of young people, for the sake of nature, and for the sake of our future, give youth the power, the platform, and any means necessary to stand up for nature and save our planet. Thank you.
Thank you to Yanis and thank you, Kabir, for that brilliant talk. We're now going to come to some questions live. So we've had quite a few come in, some themes appearing. We also had some submitted in advance. So the first question, I'm going to put this to you, Kabir. It's a two-parter. So firstly, do you think there are enough young people in conservation? And how can young people like yourself get more involved?
Well, firstly, are there enough young people in conservation? Absolutely not. And that's a huge problem because there's a lack of awareness. It's simply because of that. So I think the key to solving this is education, schools. No matter if you're in a primary school or a secondary school, maybe in secondary school it could be a little bit harder to encourage people, but I created a wildlife society with the help of some of my teachers a few years back at my secondary school. And no matter if you're in a primary school or a secondary school, children are curious. So we decided to inform our school community about how they can make a difference for the natural world, such as putting up bird feeders or putting up nest boxes, planting wildflowers, going out for walks in their local parks and green spaces and spotting wildlife. And with that, with them being armed with all that knowledge, they have spread it to their, as Yanis said, to their friends, their families, and even in their inner circles and in their communities. So it can have huge effects once you have that knowledge and once there is greater awareness among young people. So I really think it's education that is key to encouraging more of our generation to get involved within the natural world and conservation.
Absolutely, completely agree, Kabir. We've got a similar question in addition, which I'm going to put to you, Yanis, if you've got any thoughts about how do we encourage more people from urban areas or perhaps people that might be struggling financially?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question. I think the answer itself lies within nature. Nature is this wonderful, majestic, powerful thing that once you've experienced it, it's quite hard to not love and appreciate. And I think the main problem is a lack of awareness of nature. And especially in urban areas, it might be quite hard to see the nature that's around you. So I think the answer lies in getting these people into nature and showing them what's at stake. And then through that, they will be inspired to stand up for nature and help everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks, Yanis. Kabir, as you obviously live in an urban area in London, did you have any other thoughts that you wanted to add to that?
Well, I agree with Yanis. It's a lack of awareness, really, and the key is within nature itself. And also what I think is that because of that lack of awareness, people might not have many green spaces around them, but if they do, and if they're very small, people might value them less if they're living in a very built-up urban area. But through awareness, they will soon realize that there is still a lot of wildlife within urban areas, that you still have birds like peregrine falcons and different types of songbirds. within the most built up of areas. So it's really fascinating to see how urban wildlife has adapted. And I think if people value that, then that might just start a passion for nature. And even in the smallest, of green spaces, there is so much life. So I think if people start to value that as well, they can take a stand for the natural world on their doorstep.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. I'm from London as well, and it's incredible the amount of wildlife that you can find in urban areas. So probably a less tricky one. Someone just asked how many members of the youth council there are. We have 10 in total, but we in September we change over, and brilliantly the 3 of the members that were moving on, they were going off to university. They did stay and they joined us for the last session, didn't they? So there was actually 13 of us. So here's a really nice one. So why do you think it's important for young people to get involved in conservation? So I'll come to you, Yanis.
Well, there's personal benefits and there's environmental benefits, of course. So being in nature is shown to improve mental health. It's scientifically proven. Well, apart from that, you also get the active bonus. Often being in nature involves walking or some other kind of physical activity. And those two things are we as a generation really struggle with them. And I think they both count as a pandemic now, which is quite horrifying. So not only is this personal benefit from young people getting to nature, but of course there's also the environmental benefit, because per definition you're saving wildlife and you're helping the planet. So it's a great two-way bonus.
Absolutely. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Kabir?
Well, I absolutely agree with Yanis. It's a personal benefit as well as for the ecosystem and the environment. It'll definitely boost your well-being. So that's what we actively encourage at Wildlife Society at my school, which is in quite an urban area. And when everyone does practical work like making a pond or putting up bird feeders, there is a lot of exam stress that students experience in our school. So that really relieves them of that stress and encourages them to enjoy the natural world around them. And also you're benefiting the environment as well. So it's very important for young people to get involved, and also because it'll be their responsibility. It's the environment that they are going to inherit. So they need to have that knowledge and spread it amongst themselves, so everybody knows how to protect it.
Absolutely, brilliant answers. So we had an interesting question about how much you're involved with leadership, a few questions around this, and how can we encourage older generations in our leadership at RSPB to perhaps think a bit bolder or think a bit differently that the youth perspective might bring. Do you have any thoughts around that? I'll come to you, Yanis.
Well, I think it's always important to listen to the youth, and maybe not necessarily let them lead everything, but you can still give them a voice and still listen to them and still, use them in your work. Because we don't have as much say in anything really. We can't vote. We don't have a real job, etc., etc. And all of these things mean that we aren't really listened to. And if you do listen to us, of course, you're a step ahead of everybody else. You've got more people who are giving you feedback, and you've got more people who could bring up this amazing ideas.
Absolutely, listening is really key. So that's why it's so brilliant to have so many people joining us today. That's an incredible thing that you can do to support young people. Kabir, did you have any other thoughts about how we can encourage older generations to get involved with young people?
Well, as you're saying, Emily, it's brilliant to have so many people here, because it's brilliant because we feel like we're being listened to. And I agree with what Yanis was saying earlier, that there aren't many opportunities out there for young people at all to get involved with conservation, teenagers especially. And I think that's partly why our generation has lost so much connection with the natural world, because that might have led to less awareness. So I think that just by supporting us and listening to us, we'll feel more motivated, and it'll boost our self-esteem, because we know that with all this knowledge and support, we can continue to notice and appreciate and protect the natural world.
Absolutely. So we've had an ask as well to say, well, what can we do to help? So in summary, it's about listening and looking at what you can do to support young people. So we have had another question about the natural history science qualification, and I know that you, Kabir, were a bit involved in that. So just a question on whether we think it's good or not. What are your thoughts about it?
So the natural history GCSE, I think it's going to be a very, very exciting opportunity, because it's within mainstream education. And if children in schools have that opportunity to take part in that natural history GCSE, that's going to make nature feel a lot more acceptable in schools, and a lot more, and a subject which is a lot more respected among our generation. So it arms people with that knowledge to protect the natural world. And it's going to cover a wide range of topics, which is good, because it broadens people's perspectives of nature and conservation. And it also can teach them different life skills if they want to continue that as a career in the future. So I think it's going to be very important for our generation to teach them those skills to protect our natural world for the future.
Absolutely. So we've had a question about how you reach out to young people, a bit more about what you do. So people are interested in whether you use social media to connect with young people, or if you don't, perhaps maybe you've got some ideas about how you might be able to, either in individual capacity or as part of the youth council. Kabir, are you happy to take that one?
Okay. So I write a blog in my spare time. I found it increasingly hard to write it because of revising for GCSEs, but in my spare time I go on social media and raise awareness about the wildlife and the biodiversity in London, and also just initially going onto social media in 2017 actually helped me connect with so many like-minded young naturalists, and I learned a lot from them, and I've made quite a few connections around the conservation world, which has introduced me to a lot more about what's going on in the UK in terms of wildlife and conservation, and how people are protecting nature here in the UK. It's really broadened my perspective. So if I hadn't been introduced to social media, it would have probably taken a very long time for me to understand what conservation is like here. But yes, I think I use Twitter mainly, and that's helped me create a lot of connections.
Yeah, Twitter has been brilliant. I actually first came across Kabir before he was on the Youth Council on Twitter, and that's how we meet a lot of the young people that we work with. It is a really, really good space to interact and meet like-minded people. So a really interesting question about how you connect with nature over the years and how that might change. So they're wondering that, do you think that you're always going to be interested in nature, or do you think that might drop off? For example, if you do choose to go off to university, or if you go on to another career, do you think it'll always be central to you, or part of who you are? For Yanis, that one, I think.
Yeah, well, for the majority of my life, it was my parents taking the initiative to take me out to nature. But of course, that still inspired me to become an environmentalist and do all of these really cool stuff and get into conservation. But recently, I've started to take my own initiative, and I found a route that I can take with my bike to a local Norfolk Wildlife Reserve, which is beautiful, and I really enjoy being there on my own as well. Yeah, I don't think I will ever really lose interest, purely because I don't think you need to be in a nature reserve to enjoy nature. So even in university, if I don't go to a nature reserve, I'll still see a blackbird or a robin and still appreciate it.
Brilliant. Kabir, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Well, I think that once you've developed a passion for nature, it'll stick with you throughout your life in some way. So I got into nature just by, nature itself was when I walked into my living room. I was probably about 3 or 4, and around that time, some of David Attenborough's documentaries had just been released, like Planet Earth, which had been released 1 or 2 years ago, and I saw my grandma watching that on the TV and noticing all those different species appear before us on the TV really made me excited that all these amazing animals live here on Earth. And then I realized how many of those live around me. That was when I was about 7 or 8. And when I looked out into my garden and saw all these different bird species, and realizing over time, over the years, that this was in London, really made me try and have the passion to try and campaign for them and to raise awareness about the wildlife here in the capital and also in other urban areas. So I think it has changed from just being interested in nature to start campaigning for it. And if I do go to university, I absolutely agree with Yanis. You don't have to be in a nature reserve to enjoy nature. You can look around you because the natural world has many different forms. Yes, it'll just stick with you throughout your life.
Brilliant. Thank you both so much for all your thoughts today and for your talk. We're at time now, but we will just a reminder that we will come back to any of those questions. Thank you so much for all your questions. We will answer them at the end of the session. They'll be posted on the website. So I hope you were able to get a really good insight into what the Youth Council is all about and some youth perspective on how they feel about the natural environment. So thank you to Kabir and Yanis, and thank you to each and every one of you for joining us today. Goodbye.